Hey everyone, today let's do a deep dive into differential tuning. The mechanics and tuning of differentials can often be misunderstood, and I figured this would be a great topic to do a bit of a more focused video on. So let's start with the basics just to make sure everyone's on the same page and explain what a differential is. Differentials allow power to be delivered to your wheels while also allowing them to move at different speeds. This is needed because when turning, your inside tire is moving slower than your outside tire, and without a differential, your wheels would be locked together, causing your outside tire to drag across the road during corners. Differentials are only required on whatever wheels are getting power, so a rear-wheel drive car will only have one in the rear, front-wheel drive only in the front, and an all-wheel drive car will have both a front and rear, as well as a center differential, which is a bit different and we'll cover that later. Now, in real life, there are a lot of different styles of differentials, but in Forza, we only really need to worry about one, the two-way. Even though Forza gives us the choice between stock, 1.5, and two-way diffs, these are not exactly the same as their real-life counterparts, and a two-way diff in Forza will give us all the benefits of the previous two without any of the negatives that you would get in real life, and it won't cost us any extra PI either. If you know how to properly tune a differential, two-way is always the right choice. So let's look at the differential tuning window to help us understand how to tune. Let's start by focusing only on rear-wheel drive. You'll see on this 370Z we have one rear diff, and we can adjust the percentage for acceleration and deceleration. The accel setting only applies when we're on the gas, and the decel setting only applies when we're engine braking or on the brakes. When coasting at a near constant speed, none of these settings apply and the diff will always be open. The percentage essentially adjusts how much the left and right wheels lock together. So at 100%, the left and right wheels would be completely locked, unable to spin independently at all. This is a great setting to use for drifting, and it can be helpful in extreme off-roading when one tire might be in the air, but in racing situations, you never want a fully locked diff as it will always cause loss of traction around a corner. So let's move everything to 0%. Here, the wheels are free to move completely independently of each other and the diff will be open. But this means that whichever wheel has the least resistance will spin the most and get the most power. So on a corner, your outside tire wouldn't be getting much or any power because the power is following the path of least resistance, which is the inside tire. This leads to understeer and slower cornering. In extreme cases, say when one tire is on ice or even in the air, the other tire contacting the road will get no power and the car will be stuck. If the differentials were locked at least to some percentage, the wheel on the ground would be able to receive some or all of the power leaking out of that spinning wheel and apply it to get the car moving. In racing, getting more power to the outside wheel on rear-wheel drive cars will promote more oversteer. Alright, so clearly we want a setting somewhere in the middle. In a rear-wheel drive vehicle, you want the setting to generally be as high as possible without causing the wheels to lock up too much for any given corner, thus leading to abrupt weight shift and or loss of traction. If your setting is also too low, especially on high power vehicles, your inside wheel, which will be getting most of the power but has less grip, will end up spinning because the power will overcome the grip limit, so you have to send at least some of that power to that outside wheel, which is of course able to handle more grip due to weight transfer. So how do you find the right percentage? The best way I've found is to start with a diff that's about 30% locked on acceleration and decel. Now find a flat corner that you can take at a good speed, say 60 to 100 miles per hour depending on the car's class. Take that corner and observe how much over or understeer the car has. Now keep taking that corner entering at roughly the same speed while upping the diff percentage by 10% each time. You should see more and more oversteer until a certain point where no more oversteer can be gained and you start to lose traction. This usually happens somewhere around 75% lock. Now you generally want your decel setting, which helps with corner entry as well as braking grip, to be a bit lower than your acceleration setting. This will promote more oversteer when entering a corner and while braking. But if you notice your car turning too sharply on corner entry, a higher rear diff lock can help keep this in check. So that has rear wheel drive cars covered. Now let's talk front wheel drive, and luckily everything here is roughly the same, but reversed in a way. Reducing acceleration here will promote oversteer, so instead of tuning as close to 100% lock as possible, we want to tune closer to 0%. All the other rules still apply. We still want enough power going to both wheels so that one doesn't get too much power and slip. Finally, we have all-wheel drive. Tune your rear and front diff like you normally would, but now we have an extra tool to play with, the center diff. This simply adjusts how much power goes to the front or to the rear. 100% rear lock will essentially make the car rear wheel drive and vice versa for 100% front lock. You generally want this setting somewhere closer to rear diff lock, as more power to the rear will promote more oversteer and cornering ability. Follow the same rules here of turning this setting up until you start to lose traction. This usually happens somewhere around 85%. Once you find your traction limit for the center diff though, it can usually be beneficial to back it down about 10% from the limit. Now so far this has all really been advice for road racing, but in rally you want to tune your diffs a bit different. While on less grippy surfaces, your tires will want to spin much more, and a low diff setting will completely gimp the amount of power you can put down to the road and cause a lot of understeer. So, follow the same tuning guidelines as before, but here, you want your diff settings to be higher. This will allow you to use much more of your power. With rally diff tuning, it comes a lot more down to feel, as there isn't so much a hard limit anymore for when one of your tires loses traction. Alright, let's give a summary. Rear diffs should be tuned as high as possible while maintaining grip, usually between 40 and 85%. Too low, and your inside tire will spin and lose traction. Too high, and your outside tire will drag and lose traction. Front diffs are the other way around. Tune as low as possible while maintaining grip, usually between 15 and 40%. Too high, and your outside tire plows and causes understeer. Too low, and you lose power. Decel should always be tuned a bit lower than your acceleration setting, and on center diffs, the more power you send to the rear, the more oversteer you have, but too high, and you'll lose grip all around. Usually you want this setting between 50 and 85%. And in rally, you want higher diff settings all around to get more power to the road. Alright guys, I know this was an earful, but I really hope I was able to at least somewhat help explain how differentials work and how to tune them. And if you want more info or are still confused, I really recommend looking at some real-world resources. Engineering Explained on YouTube has an amazing series on differentials that helped me a ton, so check them out if you're interested, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks everyone.